You're listening to the Iron and Grace podcast, so pick up your sword and join the good fight.
An excellent wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. What's up, buddy?
What's up?
This is Kyle.
This is Drew.
Welcome to Iron and Grace.
So this is we've done a couple now.
Feeling smooth.
It's feeling a little bit smoother. We got a new setup with lights and things, so hopefully it's a little better for y'all to watch. And Kyle hooked us up with these mic stands, so hopefully the audio is a little bit crisper than it was last time.
Yeah, hopefully everybody can actually hear us.
Yeah. So, as y'all heard, we feel like we got to hit dating and marriage.
Yep. Relationships are a pretty important part of life. Most important relationship next to one with Christ is the one we have with our bride.
Yeah.
So
we hit this a little bit, kind of on the first podcast, a little bit. Just I think we were just drawn to it because it has affected our lives so much. But like you said, I think just right out the gate, I think marriage, starting with marriage as a Christian man, it's so important in our lives.
Yeah.
And it should be prioritized in a way that it's not being prioritized now.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, marriage. I think marriage should be looked at as a goal.
Yeah.
For young men and young women, even at kids, should be looking forward to marriage, not dreading it or feeling like it's a something that you just have to do because you're expected to. It should be something that we're excited to do.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe a good way to start talking about this topic is like a quick run through on, you kind of talked about how you met Deanna when we interviewed
Did my
you.
story, yeah.
But maybe just a quick recap of how you met Deanna, and I'll do a quick one on how I met Jerry Lynn.
Absolutely. So we've been together a while now. We've been married 5 years. We dated for
Still newlyweds.
yeah, still newlyweds. Going on 6 this February, so we're getting out of that newlywed stage. But we've been together a while. I think it's something probably with Deanna in pharmacy school, it was something that I think marriage took the back burner in our relationship. And I don't know if that was our maturity or if it was us not prioritizing marriage like we should have as Christians.
And make a mental note there, because I want to come back and talk about that, relationships and prioritization. I don't know if I said that word right, but prioritization during schooling and finding a career and entering into adult life. So make mental note. Keep going.
And as I kind of found Christ through my relationship with Deanna. I think Christ was kind of drawing me in that part of my life. And if you want, you can watch that podcast on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you listen. But as I progressed in my faith, I started to realize how important marriage was. And that's kind of what drew me to having the thought process and belief that, okay, we're together now. And we always had that intention, really pretty early on in our relationship that like we were going to get married, but it was kind of always just kind of a far off thing in my mind. But as my faith, I feel like deepened and probably my education on scripture deepened, I started to realize like, I don't even know if it was realized or if it was almost kind of like I was, what's the word I'm looking for? Convicted of, okay, this needs to be done.
Yeah.
Almost a conviction more than a like, oh, I want to go get married. It was like, no, I need, like, if we're going to do this, we need to get married.
Yeah.
So we got married, and that, we've been married going on 6 years, and it has been such a blessing in my life, and it has been such a journey and an adventure. And it has impacted my life in a way that nothing else in my entire life has, other than probably my Christian transformation and redemption and walking from my previous ways.
Yeah. See, my and Jerry Lynn's story is a lot different because we met very young. We were 15. She was the little sister of a buddy of mine that I hung out with, and I met her once, and said, I want to be with this girl. We went on one date. We've been together ever since. But I decided, my folks split when I was two. Two. Been through a handful of step parents. Have a stepmom. My dad and stepmom been together for 20 something years now. She's great. But I saw a lot of divorce, a lot of pain, and felt a lot of that in my childhood. And I decided, I think I was 12 when I made the conscious decision that I wanted to get married one time and make it work, which is kind of a weird thing to think about at that age. But I'd seen so much of it not working already. And my parents were not malicious towards each other at all. They were always, they always got along, at least around us, anytime that they had to be in the same room as each other, which was as little as possible, I'm sure. But I saw the pain in my dad's face, especially when him and my first stepmom split up. And I saw when my mom and my stepdad split up, I saw the disruption there, and they shielded us kids from it as much as they could, but it was there. And I decided really young, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get married once, and I'm going to have kids, and I want to do the best I can at being a husband and a father. I had no idea what that meant. Yeah. Not a clue. But I met Jerry Lynn at 15, and I made that decision. This is the girl. If she'll have me, I'm going to be with this woman for the rest of my life. And we dated through high school. I actually moved in with them. I moved in to her house with her parents at 16. And neither of my parents really even knew because they were split. So dad thought I was at mom's house. Mom thought I was at dad's house. No, I was at Jerry Lynn's house. And her parents were okay with that for some reason.
Yeah.
And, I got out of high school, went to school in Connecticut, and as soon as I could get out of the dorms and into my own apartment, I went back to Ohio, got her stuff, and took her to Connecticut. And it was, her and I against the world. We stayed there for about a year before we moved to Virginia, and we got married when we were 20. Yeah, we got married when we were 20, and we've been together 16 years. So we've got 5 kids, and we've been through a lot.
Yeah.
We've been through, a lot. Deaths of family members, 2 miscarriages, financial hardships, leaving jobs, opening businesses, all the things. That woman has been by my side through everything. And it has not always been, the things that we've been through together have not always been easy, but there's never been a question of whether or not we were going to be together through it. So we've been through some struggles, but it's never been hard to be married to her. I'm sure it's been hard to be married to me, to be fair, but so I think I've got a little bit of weight and a little bit of experience to talk to, especially the young guys that are going through, dating, and the young guys that have long-term girlfriends that they're quote unquote serious about. And why I think it's so important to make that commitment, and why it shouldn't feel like a burden. I mean, it is something that we're called to do, but it's not a burden. It is literally, like you said, it is the best thing that's ever happened to me. That woman, I would not be anything that I am without her.
And it's so funny too, because we have kind of different stories on how our marriages happen, and it's I think when you see Kyle's story, you see so many people in the world that might look at it in a negative way. And I think if you were to look at me when I was 18, graduating high school and living kind of like a life of sin, I would have thought the same thing of like, oh, he's locked down. He's not going to be able to go out and have fun and things like that. And that's the way a lot of like worldly culture reacts to it. Right. But as Christians, like, I'm envious of how you guys were able to start so early and know what you wanted early. And that's that conviction that I wish I had had earlier on, but that we should be striving for that from an early age as Christians. And whatever the audience is, whether you're 16, 15, 12, 25, 30, or 60, like, if you're not married at wherever you are, you know, as a young man, that should be prioritized.
Yeah.
Early on.
Yeah. It should at least be looked at as a good thing.
Yes.
You know, is everybody going to get married? Is everybody going to have a big family? No. And Paul, Apostle Paul says that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's okay to live like Paul and to not be married. But, it literally says in the first book of the Bible to get married.
Yeah. I mean,
leave your father and mother, become one flesh.
Yeah. It's there. I have so many show notes in my tablet. It's like, because there's so many things to hit, because as you live your life, you see the way the marriages that work, the marriages that don't work. And like, you hear all of the opinions on marriage, because that's something that everyone's pretty vocal on. If they've had a terrible marriage and now they're single and they look at marriage in a negative light, they have everything to say about it, right? Yeah. But what I think I want to be so clear to like young men is that marriage is a joy.
Yeah.
And you are not missing out.
No.
By getting married young like Kyle did.
Yeah, no.
As someone that didn't get married, I mean, what's crazy to me is I still got married young in the eyes of our current culture and dynamic of where we live, even though I wasn't really that young. It was 5 or 6 years after you got married. Yeah. I got married at 25, I think I was. So that doesn't seem like, I felt like I was late to the rodeo at that point, because it was like a race. We got to get married and get started on this.
Well, building a household. There's a logical timeline to it, especially if you want to have kids. And again, not everybody's called to that, but kind of you are. Mm-hmm. It is part of our responsibility to have children and raise children that are going to, keep this big blue ball working the way it's supposed to be working. But, for a young woman, there is kind of an ideal age to be having kids. And we had kids all through the range. It's from your early 20s into your early 30s. That's kind of the time frame that you've got. Once you get into your mid-late 30s, it's not impossible to have kids, but it's not as easy, and chasing around toddlers at 40 is not as easy as chasing around toddlers at 25.
That's something that like me and Deanna have had a lot of conviction for recently, because, I'm 31, we're 31, and I don't think it's one of those things that you just keep putting off. Yeah. But I think if you prioritize marriage in a Christian way, and because children is part of that. Yeah. Not that everyone that's married is going to have children. I'm going
to do my best to make sure that Drew goes home and works on making babies.
Yeah. But I think for me, it wasn't something that was really, I hate to say like shoved down your throat, but like it really should be shoved down your throat as young men. Get married, have a bunch of children, build a Christian household, not only just from the joy that's going to come from it, but we should build the kingdom. And what better way? Like I see Kyle, they pack all into the van and all of his Christian children and his beautiful family, and they're living for the Lord, and they're going to send out their children as they continue to grow to be Christian arrows and warriors for the kingdom.
To be fair and to be honest, when Jerry Lynn and I got together, I mean, like I told you the other day, I would have said I was a Christian, and she probably would have too. But we didn't know. We didn't know what that. I mean, we were 15, 16 years old, doing all the things that 15, 16-year-olds probably shouldn't be doing. We were living together, so do the math. But God had plans for us, and we just somehow, before we really got on the path to Christ, we were looking in that direction just enough to keep us from doing anything too overly stupid, I guess, is maybe the way to put it. I don't know. But I think kind of wind us back in just a little bit, let's talk to the young guys first.
Yeah.
I'm talking young, from the ages of 10 to 15. What are we teaching these young men, and what should we be teaching young men as far as dating, looking for a girlfriend, and looking towards the future as much as a 15-year-old can? Because I think we've done a disservice to kids in the whole dating world, where you should have a bunch of girlfriends and that girl's cute and we're sending notes to each other in school. Why aren't we half step back? When I was 10 years old, I was doing construction with my dad. My summers were spent doing construction with my dad. I mean, I was building houses at 10, 12 years old. I was carrying 2x4s and pounding nails when they would let me. But at that point in my life, I was going to be a carpenter. I knew I was going to work with my hands. And at that point, that was going to be building houses. So at 10 years old, my career is kind of like, we're working towards that. And your parents are talking about, you got to make sure that you're getting a good education. And once you get into your teen years, you're 14, 15, 16. Now we're talking about college. What are you going to go to school for? What are you going to do for a career? And we start to put a lot of effort into making sure that young men are prepared to go into the workforce.
Yeah.
Which is great. That's necessary. But what are we going into the workforce for? What do you need a decent job for?
For our marriage and our household.
To provide for your marriage and your household. So why aren't we teaching kids at the age of 10, 12, 15 how to build their resume for a good relationship? Because, once you become a teenager, that's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah.
We're all looking at girls and hunting for girls. And
I just think why it's been kind of thrown by the wayside, I don't know. I mean, whether that's, Satan's way of attacking Christians by putting marriage in the back of their brains and not being a prioritized for our culture. But it, like you said, at 10 years old, we should be teaching and learning how to find a Christian wife and what it looks like. And like you said, with college and vocation, why do we want to go to college? Why do we want to make money? Why do we want to have a successful career? And that was something that was never really thought about in my world when I was that age. But what is the answer to what's the cultural answer right now? And it's so that you can make money and be happy. And I think in that, while we should seek joy, in that there's a subtle lie.
Joy and happiness are not necessarily
this thing. And if we're just to chase happiness at all costs, we're going to be lost, right? And we know that as Christians because of our sinful hearts. Right. And I think people seek happiness and fulfillment from their careers and jobs and things like that, and even their marriage. As Christians, we hold, our Christian faith that's where we find our contentment, right? And it's not in our wives and not in our children. And that's a hard thing, I think, for some people to hear. But it has to be that way. Not that we don't have contentment in our wives, but Christ and our faith has to be first, and that is what sets the bar for a healthy marriage.
Yeah, well, and if you've got things oriented properly, if Christ is first, if that's what your relationship is centered around, then you will have joy in your relationship. Because if he's not the center, if he's not what you're focused towards, you're either focused towards that other person, and you will fall short, or you're focused towards yourself, and in which case you're going to be a selfish prick, and you're going to fall short there too.
Yeah.
One way or another, at some point it does get difficult.
And kind of one of the things I had in my show notes, scroll back up, is what is important when we're going into marriage as Christians? What should we look for? And we're supposed to model Christ and how Christ treated the church. Like that is our model. Not, I'm going to find a wife because she's gorgeous and I want someone that's going to be able to do things so that I can go out and do whatever I want and be happy.
Right.
That's not what Christ did for the church, right?
Right.
Christ loved the church, but he sacrificed for the church, right? That's what we're called to do as husbands. Our main goal in our marriage is not for us to be happy. It's to sacrifice and live out a life for our spouse and for our household.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just look like going to work,
Right.
Because when we look at Christ as a whole in the church, right, we look towards the resurrection and his sacrifice that he made for all of us, but he also called out the church when there was error. So there's also, it's a bigger picture than not just, oh, Christ loved the church, look what he did for us.
Right.
How did Christ interact with the church and the people that were in the church in his time, and how does he interact with us now?
Yeah.
He moves us towards redemption. He draws us, and now I'm losing the same word that I lost before. He convicts us when we're doing wrong, right? And that's what a healthy marriage looks like.
Yeah.
For me, it's not just, and that's something that I experienced with Deanna, is I've grown so much. I hate to use the word personal development, but that's what it is, because if you're not married, you're just out there on your own, right? And you're going to be chasing whatever you're chasing, happiness, job, or whatever, and it's easy to turn into kind of an egotistical person, because there's no one right there by your side to call you on things like, Kyle, this is not what you're doing or what you're saying. Like, it doesn't seem to make sense, right?
Yeah.
Or for me, Deanna comes to me, or like, I have a thought on things. You can share that with your spouse on a different level because they know you so well, and it betters your marriage as a whole and you as a person.
Yeah. Okay, we got to backtrack.
Yes.
So this we'll say, kid is 15, 16, 17. He's found a girl. He got a girlfriend. Whatever that looks like at 15, 16 years old. How should we be encouraging these young men to behave, to treat that young girl? How do you cultivate that relationship in a way that can lead to a good marriage? 15, 16, 17 years old, your hormones are going crazy. It's hard to see with your eyes.
Yeah.
And the head on your shoulders. But, as a young man, being respectful and kind and taking that opportunity to practice what it's going to look like to be, a leader in a household. And of course we're talking Christian men, but even to the not yet Christian or the young, a lot of these teen boys, they don't know what they are yet.
Yeah.
And that's fair. We'll get there. But even from a worldly perspective, you just want to land a smoking hot girl that, you hope to get married to, and you don't even know what that means yet. A lot of the ways that I see these young men interacting with these girls is disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's I'm not sure what word I'm looking for here.
Chivalry's definitely dead in our culture.
Yeah, I don't know if it's dead, but it's not
in a good place.
It's not in a great place. And I see these young guys and these young girls, and I'm like, man alive, why would you treat somebody poorly if you want to have a relationship? Like, we don't treat our friends that way. Treat the girl the way you want her to treat you.
Yeah.
And
if it's hard, I guess, as a 15-year-old to think of, if I had a daughter, how would I want them to be treated? But a lot of people have sisters. And I think that humbles a lot of men at a young age, of when their sister starts to get into the dating pool and starts to look, okay, I'm looking for a husband, and the way that they're going to get treated, I think opens the eyes for a lot of brothers out there. I didn't have sisters. My brother-in-law, I've talked to him about this, and you can see it on him, him having and growing up with older sisters. It affected him greatly in how he treats women, and that's important. And I think, too, that's why it's so important to have sound Christian fathers and marriages, because that's going to be where 15-year-olds are learning to how to, and even if you don't have that, look towards someone that is doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a 14-year-old daughter, and again, I just said I met Jerry Lynn at 15. Mm-hmm. So, I look at her and I'm like, man, how will I react when some young boy comes and tries to court my daughter? What would I find acceptable for how she would be treated? And I'm not a huge dude. I'm not super intimidating. But I do spend a good portion of my time learning how to break people.
He may not be intimidating on the surface. He's a little intimidating on the surface, but he's a very dangerous individual.
So, you're going to have to, if you want to date my daughter, you're going to need my approval. Sorry.
Yeah. Somebody's going to play this back in the future.
Yeah. If you're 15 and you're watching this, I'm watching you.
Yeah.
But what would I expect from a young man who wants to date my daughter? And I think about that. I'm like, my daughter's smart. She's funny. She's beautiful, just like her mother. Her mind, her time, her artistic abilities are all very valuable. I expect a young man to treat her as if she's valuable.
Yeah. When I think the easiest thing for me to say, if I was to be giving, like a 15-year-old was sitting in front of me and it's clear that Scripture calls us to be sexually pure. That's crystal clear. I mean, that is the will of God for us to be sexually pure till marriage. Once you're married, you can have sex. That's how this process works. Wasn't how we did it.
No.
Clearly.
No.
And it was wrong when we did it. And if I could do it over again, I wouldn't do it that way. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to note because our culture prioritizes sexuality and prioritizes the way we look. But we want to make it cool. We talked about that before. We want to make it, you should pride yourself on being sexually pure. You should look to as a virtue to have as a young man. And if I'm speaking to the 15-year-olds, I know for a fact that if they say that in a group of their cohorts in school, they're going to get looked at like a crazy person.
Yeah.
But you have to stay strong in that, and it will greatly impact your future marriage and relationships. And I think you'll agree with this too. It'll weed out so many women that you probably at the time might not want to be married to.
Yeah. And it's funny because when you're 15, 16 years old, sounds like, man, that guy, his girlfriend, sounds pretty cool. But now as an adult, as a real adult, like, man, they managed to hold off until they're married. That's impressive.
Yes.
That's really cool. And the relationship that you get to have with a wife is pretty cool, man. Like, to all you young guys out there, like, I'm not sure it's worth the wait, dude. Trust me, it's worth the wait.
Yeah, it is.
A good relationship, a good marriage is cool, is awesome.
And it is no wonder, I say this all the time when we talk about this topic, like, it's no wonder why people don't get married. If you're freely having sex, if you're freely living that lifestyle, not married, even if it's with one person, it's easy to realize what are we working towards. If we're holding to our sexual purity and it motivates you to go out and take those steps to make the commitment of marriage, to be able to enjoy those things that God has blessed the marriage covenant with.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, to a kid who's young, a teenager, upper teenager, if you manage to hold yourself back in that way, it shows to that young girl that you value her more than just what she looks like with her clothes off. And it also gives you the opportunity to really learn who that person is. Because if all you're concentrating on is what's going to happen late at night, then you're concentrating less on who that person is.
Yeah.
And that's a great time to really learn who they are and develop a relationship. Go through some things together. Experience real dating. Take them out to dinner. See how they react in a crowd.
Yeah.
Go and do. I'm trying to come up with good things to go and do because we were never big partiers when we were kids. Me and Jerry Lynn just
see. that if you look at culture as a whole, that's where people are meeting people, is in those party scenes. And I think it's so important as Christian men, or even men that are like we described before, walking in Christian values. It's important to be in an environment that women that you're in. I mean, at 15, you're not necessarily a woman yet, but you're getting there. Should be an environment that there's other people that share those values. In the bar and high school parties and things like that. That's not probably where you're gonna find someone that's gonna share those values. And I'm not saying you can't,
Right.
and my marriage didn't spurt from me going to, a Christian like singles event, right? But
Yeah, right.
We should be prioritizing who we are, and character matters as we get older. And it's hard to see that at a young age, but it has to be prioritized, and you have to focus on these things, because we're not just looking for someone to screw around with, quite literally and figuratively, as companionship for the rest, like just to have fun with. Like, that's not what we're doing. There's a mission behind why we're getting married. And that doesn't downplay the love and compassion and joy that we have in our marriage, but it's more than just you fulfilling your happiness at having a partner, as a word that's thrown around.
The goal is to find somebody to share life with.
Yes.
And at some point, we've got some friends, younger friends in their early to mid 20s, that are in really great relationships, that have been dating for, in my opinion, longer than they should have been before getting married. But they'll know who they are. But you get to live. The goal is to live life together. And life consists of everything. It consists of good days and bad days, and getting new jobs and losing jobs, and death and pain and all of the things that come along with life. And when you find a person who you feel like can complement you, and you can complement them in the way you have to trudge through this world, and sometimes we're trudging and sometimes we're running, and that's just how the world works.
Yeah.
But when you find somebody who you say, you know what, I think I can stand with this person in the rain. And
that's a good way to put it.
And I think that this person is going to rejoice with me on my good days. And it seems like when I'm doing something stupid, this person's willing to call me out. Yes. And sometimes that hurts, but they want to do it in a way that doesn't just cut me down. They want to do it in a way that corrects me and builds me back up. When you find that person, or even a person that's close to that.
Yeah.
Because when you're 20 years old, you got a long way to go.
Yeah,
you're going to change some.
And you're not perfect.
And we'll get into that too.
Yeah.
But when you find that person, you're like, this person builds me up, and I want to build this person up. Why do we think that we have to, okay, well, now we have to move in together for a couple years and keep testing the relationship and see if we can really, see if we can live together, see if we can cohabitate or whatever you call it. No, that's not how it works.
And it shouldn't.
This person builds me up. I want to build this person up. I know I'm going to change and grow.
Yeah.
She's going to change and grow. Let's change and grow together. Make that commitment. Because like you said, with Deanna going to college and doing what you guys were doing, things are complicated right now. We want to get through this before we get married. Things will be a little bit easier. No, they will not.
They won't.
No, they won't. If you wait until, okay, we are ready, well, now you're different people.
Yes.
And you took that time to grow and to learn, but she's growing and learning over here, and you're growing and learning over here. Okay, now we decide to make this commitment. Okay, make your stuff work with me, and I'll make my stuff work with you. No, that's not ideal.
Yeah, that's not how it works. And I mean, that speaks to becoming one flesh, right?
Right.
That's what what is happening
And
when we get married.
that doesn't just mean sex.
No.
I mean,
This is one thing that, as we've progressed in marriage, me and Deanna have, and my relationship with you has been a large driver of that too, is realizing the importance of having children. And when you think about that scripture, right, you become one flesh. One flesh, obviously, there's the sexual connotation of that. But also, when you have children, which is a primary focus of the marriage covenant,
Right.
you are making physical people. Like, you are taking two people, coming together and becoming one flesh. And there's, like, you have children that are actual flesh human beings that you've created.
Even before that, so yes, in one flesh means sex, and one flesh means producing children. But it also means you grow together in such a way where it's not just Kyle.
Yeah.
And it's not just Jerry Lynn.
Mm-hmm.
We are one. We are a team. I'm on her team and she's on my team. And I'm going to go to bat for her and she's going to go to bat for me. And that's why we're able to go through what we've been through and why we're able to continue to grow. And that's why when I go home and it's been a long day and I'm a total prick to everybody and I'm rough with the kids and I'm short with her, why she can still love me and have my back. And she knows when it's time to go, babe, you're being a dick.
Yeah.
Calm down. She knows how to do it in such a way where it doesn't make me more mad.
Yeah.
It calms me down. And she also knows how and when to shield me in such a way that allows me to be grumpy for the time I need to be grumpy and keep the household running the way it's supposed to. You know, the relationship that we have, because we're one team, one in every way, makes us function better individually too.
Yes.
You know, I am better because I have her.
Yeah. And I just feel like there's been a drive to go away from that. You know, I like so many people that I work with, they're married, but they lack what you just described. They lack, because it's like, okay, we're married now, but we're still living these like two separate lives.
Right.
And we're on this path together.
We have separate bank accounts. We have separate friends. We have separate everything.
And like, I've talked about this with Deanna, because there's so much negativity like in the workspace about how people talk about their wives. And one thing that irks me the most is when young people are getting ready to get married, there's like those just sayings that get thrown away, like, oh, you know, like, well, you're locking it down or whatever, like, you know, negative sayings that people throw out, and they're almost discouraging. And I don't know if that's coming from them having a marriage that they're not, you know, content with or whatever, or they've been divorced in the past and they think they're looking out with a person, but that's not how it should be. We should be joyful when we hear that somebody's getting married and having these conversations that their marriage is proper.
Yeah. Yeah. To say something like that I'm going to talk about a young couple that you and I know pretty well. I won't say their names because they'll probably know who they are.
Yeah.
But you know, I see Jerry Lynn and myself in this couple in a lot of ways. Now, granted, they're both smarter than we probably were, definitely smarter than me. But I see the way he looks at her, and I see the way she looks at him. And I can tell the way they talk about each other, even when they're fighting.
Yeah.
That she cares for him and he cares for her in a way where they want to build each other up.
Yes.
Now, they're not married yet, even though I bug them about it as often as I'm a terrible friend like that.
But that's how it should be.
But there are people in the world that would say to them, and they're both in college still. She's working on her second master's or something like. I don't know. These kids are incredible.
Yeah.
They're hardworking. You know, he owns a business and is working another job. They're great. They're great. But the world would tell them, wait till you get out of school.
Yeah.
Establish your career. Figure things out. Get financially stable. No.
Yeah.
No. Figure it out together.
Yes.
Because
100%.
young man, you are going to help her get through school on the bad days. Young woman, when he comes home and he's had a terrible day at work, when he had a job to do and the client was a nightmare to work for and they nitpicked your work and they said they weren't going to pay you, and you come home and you don't know what to do because you don't have the money for the rent and you're not sure if you're going to get paid for this job, be there for him.
Yeah.
And that's how you become one flesh.
Absolutely.
Because we have struggled together. So I'm not building me, young man, an individual who can conquer the world on his own, and you, strong young woman, that can conquer the world on your own. Because you can't.
Yeah,
the world will beat you down.
Yeah.
But together, we're twice as strong. And when I get beat down, she can pull me back up. And when she gets beat down, he can pull you back up. You know, when she's dealing with anxiety and depression, with which women are much more prone to than men, he doesn't know how yet, but he will learn how to pull her up out of that and to support her in that. I know, because Jerry Lynn has dealt with a good bit of that. And it's taken years, but I know now how to, when she's in the deep darkness, and I say, babe, it's okay. I love you. I'm here.
Yeah.
We're going to get through this. And she knows when I say that to her that it's true, that I mean it, and that I'm there. And that is something that the world is telling you a lie when they tell you to wait for that.
Yeah. That I could rant for hours about that. And it's like a hindsight thing maybe for people. And I wish it wasn't. And I hope it's not for the young people. If you listen to this, or even just you come to this conclusion from someone else, or just from, you know, the Holy Spirit moving on you. But it's, at least from my personal experience, you know, we were kind of going through the dating world, and I was kind of unsettled with what I was doing career-wise. And once I had that conviction to get married, I was taking on a responsibility, because if I was going to get married, there was responsibility that came along with it.
Right.
You know, the past me was kind of, it had to die, right? And I went out and I started working at the sheriff's office, which now I have, you know, a career that I'm making more money. She was still in school. We got married. She's still in school. She started pharmacy school, which is a whole nother undertaking, and she goes online. Right. And practicality was, I was working, I was able to supply financially, and she was able to have an area that she could study and be able to do that effectively. But not only, when she had to travel to Omaha, we got in the car. We drove to Omaha together, you know, as one. You know, we're on these endeavors together, just like she helps me when I come home from work, because it's a stressful job, just like you described, and I help her. I help her study physically, obviously, with doing stuff, but we're together as one flesh on this mission together. And we support each other on the same mission. They're not two separate missions. And I think culture's pushed us that way, to live together, but be separate. I don't even know how to describe that.
And, you know, and the friendship that you develop.
Oh, absolutely.
Is amazing too. Like, you know, I've got buddies that are guys. You're a good friend of mine. Donnie's a good friend of mine. I have good friends that are guys. I like to do things with my buddies. But at the end of the day, adventures are cool. Adventures with a beautiful woman.
Way cooler.
Way cooler.
Yeah.
When the beautiful woman is the beautiful woman that you get to go to bed with and wake up next to every day for the rest of your life, it's even better. Because the memories that you get to build they're shared, and there's no jealousy there.
Yeah.
It's not, oh man, when I was 20 years old, me and my 6 guy friends went I don't know what I mean, I was already married at that point, but go to Cancun for what is the Mardi Gras or whatever.
Yeah, or you know, any parties like that, summer, you know, spring break, all that stuff.
You want to see jealousy in a woman's eyes?
Yeah.
Tell her how you and 5 of your buddies went to a wet t-shirt contest in your 20s.
And exactly. And I think too, what that's so important, and going back to the sexual purity thing, whether or not, I mean, you were a different scenario, but if you live that college lifestyle, all those relationships that you're having, those short-term sexually motivated relationships, whether it's pornography or actual physical intimacy will affect your marriage in the future.
Oh, yeah.
100%. And you don't see it then. And I hope that us saying this and it motivates people to really hear that. And when they're in those moments, think about it. Like, this is going to affect my marriage. I don't know what that, who I'm going to marry yet, but I'm going to live for that because that's what really matters.
Yeah. Well, in the world saying that it's okay to go and explore, figure yourself out, meet girls, date, test things out is not good advice.
Yeah.
Like, I've never tested heroin.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm pretty confident that I don't need to.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I've never tested.
And you shouldn't.
And, sex is a good thing. Beautiful women is a good thing. Having one is a really good thing. And women especially, I mean, men are insecure too. We don't like to show it as much, but men are insecure too. But women especially with body image issues and all the things that go along with being a woman and the hormones that they have. Mm-hmm. If you've had multiple girlfriends before you meet the one that you decide is the one, which we could talk for quite a while about that statement there, the one.
It's in my show notes. I have that exact line written.
But your wife will compare herself to every woman you've ever been with.
Yeah.
It's human nature. How could you not?
Yeah,
do I look as good as whoever
so
did?
And so, yeah.
Is he thinking about her when we're in bed at night? It's human nature. How could you not?
And I think it greatly affects men's mind. Men are, it's crystal clear. Paul warns us of lust, right? And his advice is to seek marriage.
Yeah.
Because if we're going to be pure outside of marriage, the only way to indulge in sex, quite bluntly, is through marriage. And that's what it should be motivating us to fight our lust and seek marriage. And that's clear. Paul's teaching on that is crystal clear. I want to hit one thing that you were talking about earlier, and that's something I found in our friendship that was so similar is when I'm at work, people are like, oh, I got to go home on Friday and, be with the missus, or I got a honey-do list or whatever, and it's so strange to me because when I leave work, I'm super excited. I'm excited. I'm stoked to go home to my wife. I want to leave work so we can be together when I get home. I'm not saying that there aren't, I'm not tired when I get home and things like that. But that was something I found with you that was different, right? Because you have a healthy Christian marriage. It's like you're seeking to want to spend time with your family
awesome.
And your spouse.
Yeah, my wife was awesome.
Because we truly are best friends. Your spouse is your best friend, and it should be that way. Not saying you don't have Christian brothers and friends outside of your marriage, but the whole bro before hose thing is an absolute lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie.
Whoever came up with that was single or soon to be single.
Or had a really bad relationship. That probably didn't start the right way anyways.
And that's probably something we should hit on too. Because there are lots of people out there that are in bad relationships. And in the words of the great Jocko Willink, I think, people need to take some ownership there because it takes time to build a good relationship. It takes time to build a bad relationship too.
Yeah, that's true.
That goes back to, like I said, finding the one perfect person. Well, unless you're perfect, don't expect to find a perfect person.
And I think, I'm going to cut you off, but that holds people back. When you're, because me and Deanna talk about this all the time, and it's funny that, because we'd had this conversation prior, and I was like, oh, Kyle thinks we think the same. And it's when you're seeking the one, right? It's first off, you're going to have crazy expectations because they have to be the one, right? And it's this unrealistic mindset that there's some person out there that has been ordained to be your person. I think it comes along a lot with when you see a lot of outside of Christianity, spirituality and these universe type beliefs. And they think, oh, there's one person walking in California right now that has to be my wife, and I don't meet her, then I will never be happy. But what happens if a spouse dies?
Right.
Was she the one, and the next one's the second? What?
So there's a whole bunch there. I'm going to try and keep this together as best as I can, because again, from a family with multiple divorces, multiple remarriages, my dad is on his third marriage, which they've been together for, I want to say 25 years. I could be off on that. They have a great marriage. They have a biblical marriage. They're both following hard after Jesus. My stepmom she's a great woman. She's a great woman. She loves my dad. My dad loves her. They made it work. Now, we're offered grace. God gives us grace, which means we can heal from broken relationships. We can make it work with stepkids and step-parents and broken families. We can make it work, okay? That doesn't mean that that's ideal. Ideally, when my mom and dad got married, they would have made the decision, each individually and together. We're committed to each other. We're going to learn. We're going to grow. We're going to change when necessary to keep this marriage together, and not just keep it together for the kids, quote unquote, but to keep it together to make it good. It's your job to make it good. Well, at that point in their life, for whatever reason, they couldn't do that, decided not to do that. So they split. And because of that, that was 34 years ago. They have both dealt with the consequences of that for the last 34 years. I have dealt with the consequences of that. My sister, my half brother from my stepdad, that my mom and him got divorced. So there are ripples of these decisions forever.
Absolutely.
So is divorce permissible? Jesus gives us the parameters where it is. But, this is something that I think about a lot, especially with friends that are married, that are in marriages that are on rocky soil right now, or however you want to say it, that are going through difficult things. If you put the work in on the front end,
absolutely.
If Christ is in the right spot in your relationship, he's centered in your relationship, then the odds of that relationship working and growing and getting better and better and better are really, really good. A lot of relationships don't start that way. But they can go that way. If you're 10 years into a marriage and you two hate each other, there's been infidelity, there's been whatever, you can fix it. It is possible. Now, don't blow me up in the comments. I know there are extenuating circumstances. There are abuses. There are times when one person is just not willing. But if you've got two people that want to make it work, and you tell yourself, I am willing to work for this relationship, and she says, I am willing to work for this relationship. Let's struggle together and figure this out and make it work. And if it takes another 10 years, if it takes you until your 20-year anniversary to get to the point where you guys have a good relationship, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Because, Jerry Lynn and I got married when we were 20. I'm 36. We're 16 years in. If it took till today to get the relationship that we have, and I get to spend the next however many years that God gives me with the relationship that we have now, worth it. It is truly, truly, truly worth the fight. Now, again, God offers grace. We don't always make the perfect decision. Relationships fall apart, and that's when you have to go to God and go, okay, I got to put my life back together. I have several friends. We have several friends that are in the midst of divorce or have recently gone through divorce and are now they're trying to rebuild and figure it out. And that's possible. It's possible to make it work. But that should not be the goal.
And
marriage should not be looked at as, well, as long as we can get along, we'll make this work.
There's so much there too, because so many people go into the marriage thinking, or even the dating pool thinking, well, if it doesn't work, we'll just get a divorce. First off, that has rippling effects. When you throw a pebble in the pond, it ripples and hits all the banks, right? It's not just the pebble being thrown. For generations. So it should have a divorce should have that weight, right? But we shouldn't be going into it from the start thinking if it doesn't work, we'll just split up
Right.
and find somebody else. It
Yeah.
should be, we should go into it thinking, we're going to fight for this marriage.
Yeah.
We're going to fight tooth and nail to make this marriage happen because
And
we
it's
love the Lord
so
and
worth
we're
it.
going to do it. And I mean, like the marriage, vow till death do us part, right? That we're married and we should fight for that to the death.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Well, and something that you have fought for becomes way more valuable.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, Jerry and I have been married 16 years. Have all 16 years been as amazing as it is right now? No. She's married to me. A lot of that has been really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
We've dealt with some pretty serious depression. We've dealt with miscarriages. That was really hard. That was early in our marriage.
Yeah.
That was really hard. Family dynamic issues. I mean, we've dealt with some things. And if we weren't committed, not just to one another, but to the marriage covenant itself, I'm sure there were times where we could have gone, you know what? Maybe it would be easier this moment.
Easier is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I'm using a little poetic license there because I've never
Thought that.
I genuinely have never thought that. But she's married to me, so she probably has. But we made a rule early in our marriage, and I think this is. We made a rule because this was a piece of advice that I got from a married man that was older, that I think is probably the best marriage advice I've ever heard, and I give it as often as I can. And that's you never talk crap about your spouse.
Yep.
Never talk shit about your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a blunt way to put it, but I'm putting it that way on purpose. If you, with your words, complain to somebody else about your spouse, best case scenario, that person, if they're a true friend, they're going to go, hey, man, you shouldn't be talking about your wife like that.
Absolutely.
Best case. Most guys aren't going to do that. Most guys are like, oh, man, I can't believe she did that. I can't believe she's
You
acting
play
like
into
that.
it. You feed into it, making it worse.
And when you use words like that, you're confirming to yourself that you deserve better, that she's this or she's that. When in reality, chances are, if she's doing something that pisses you off, it's because you're doing something to make her do something.
Yeah.
It truly takes two. So we decided, I heard that advice very early on in our marriage, and I said, I will never talk bad about my wife. She makes it easy. Because she's great, but
and that's another thing that you see out in the world. It's like my first instinct too when I hear that is like, when someone gets married, they're making a huge commitment, whether they think it is or not. They're making this huge commitment, and like I'm in my head, I'm thinking, if you talk bad about your wife every day, like it's like talking bad about yourself because it's your wife, right? But
one flesh,
and it's like, but on a second note, it's damaging to your marriage to be talking that way about your wife, and a lot of times it breeds what isn't in what. It puts a barrier in the communication, and communication is going to be one of the most important things.
Yeah.
If you are complaining at work about something your wife's doing, 99% of the time, you probably haven't even had that discussion with the wife. First off, they might not know that they're doing something, or there might be other reasons for it, or maybe they're just doing it to be hateful because they're broken people just like we are.
Yeah.
But communication is how we heal those type of issues, not complaining to your coworker who, honestly, like you said, 99% of them probably don't really care and are just going to confirmation biased you and give you what you want to hear anyways, because not to say that they don't care as a friend, but that's sadly in our world, that's pretty much what a lot of people do. They don't hold us accountable and say, like you said, why are you talking about your wife that way?
Well, and are you going to go home and tell your wife, I was talking crap about you at work today?
Yeah.
No. So now, okay, not only did you cut her down without her even knowing about it, but now you have to lie about it.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you can get away with lying about that, maybe you can get away with lying about other things too.
It's a slippery slope.
And it's just a dangerous position to be in. And I think that if you're in a relationship with somebody you should make an absolute commitment that I will not talk crap about them to any. Now, that's not to say, if you're struggling with something and you've got someone, if Jerry and I were struggling with something, I could come to you and I could say, man, we're struggling with this and this is what's going on. But I should be trying to sell it to you in a way that says, we need to work on this. How do you think we should work on this?
Absolutely. It's not gossip.
It's not gossip. It's not, I'm never going to try and make her look bad.
Yeah.
Ever. I won't do it. And if somebody else tries to make her look bad, we might be fighting.
Yeah. And I think, because they're insulting you, like we talked about. This is our marriage. We're one flesh. We're one unit here. And it's just, you're not building the marriage up. You're pulling bricks off by going and complaining and nitpicking and things like that around. And some people, I think, sometimes it's just you're like, to be part of the group because other people are doing it.
Yeah.
Which is a sad thing that's like in our culture. But
well, and again, who do you want to be the group with? I want to be in the group with the beautiful woman that I get to see naked every night.
Yeah.
Not the, miserable guy who hates his wife and is going to go home and drink a 6-pack of beer. Yeah. I really don't care what that guy thinks so much. I care what she thinks.
We should really, this is kind of off topic, but this is something that I've come to and really think is very important, just life advice. You should really be cautious of who you take advice from. Because everyone's willing to give advice, but you need to be really, really cautious of who you're taking advice from, especially as a young person, man,
except
woman.
For us. Definitely take advice from us.
Yeah, but exactly. Look towards us and look towards our marriages and look towards people that you want a life that resembles the life that they have. Someone might be giving you advice and they've been divorced 3 times. Even if it seems like sound advice, there should be some caution there. Yeah. Because the fruit of their life reflects typically.
Well, and there are lessons in pain.
Yes.
As we know from life and from training and all the things, there are lessons in pain for sure. But does the fruit tells the story. So have they been through 3 divorces and now their life is producing good fruit? Are they in a stable relationship now? Have they adjusted? Or was it always the other person's fault? Yeah. Because those 3 marriages, there's one common denominator in those 3 marriages. Both my folks have been married 3 times. Yeah. So I don't mean to, I'm not picking on divorced people per se, because some of my best friends have been through divorces. Both my parents have been through divorces. I think very highly of them. But in this one area, like you said, we need to be careful about who we're taking advice from.
One thing too is you hear people talk about like, they almost just don't seem happy in their marriage, right? And it's something that I could never relate to because like I don't want to say that like it's hard because like you want to be humble, right? But I do have a perfect marriage, like not perfect that we don't have problems, but it's almost like we don't have problems. We're still young,
you're still newlyweds, but
speak like thinking of it like with y'all too, like. It's been such a joyful experience. And like you said, it's not like we have struggles with each other. Right. We have struggles together.
No,
like that. I guess it's a hard way to like quantify it, but it's
at some point you will.
Yes.
At some point you will, because you're a sinner. Yeah. And so is she.
A sinner. Yeah.
But and Jerry Lynn and I have been through struggles with each other. I have gone through times when I was so focused on work, so focused on building a business, so focused on everything but what she needed at home. Yeah. Where that caused pain for her, where she's doing everything she can to just hold it together at the house. And I'm not there. Yeah. And I'm disconnected. I'm here and working. And we have been through times of struggle. Yeah. Now, the things that make a relationship, because you will go through that. I'm telling you, you've been married 5-6 years. At some point, hope to go through that because you need it. Yeah. Forging takes pressure. Marriages need pressure.
Yeah.
So don't look at the rough patches in marriage as, oh crap, things are falling apart. Yeah. No. Things are getting better. You know, it takes pressure. Sometimes it takes a little bit of pain. And we have learned, you know, we just had our 16th wedding anniversary. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we have been through times where she had to look at me and say, I'm being hurt right now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm struggling with this right now because you're doing this. And sometimes we've done a really, really good job about communicating that. And sometimes we've done not such a good job of communicating. I think we've had, I'm trying to think of how many times we've been in like real fights. Maybe 3 or 4 in the 21 years that we've been together. And we don't yell at each other. We don't cuss at each other. We don't throw things. I think I might have kicked a washing machine once, which was pretty stupid.
You probably hurt your foot, so you learned your lesson.
I put a dent
quickly.
in the new washing machine. But that's, you don't need to fight to cause pain.
Yes.
But there have been times where, you know, where she was dealing with depression really bad. And that's a difficult thing to deal with as a man because I don't feel the same way she does.
Yeah.
And I'm a fixer. I'm like, okay, there's something wrong.
We'll
Let's
just
fix
fix it.
this right now. But because we've been through these things, we've learned how to talk to each other. So now, and we're not perfect and we'll continue to not be perfect. And at some point we'll go through a rough patch again. But she knows that she can come to me and say, hey, you've been doing this and it really bothers me. Or you said this thing and it really hurt me.
Yeah.
And she knows that I'm not going to go, oh, well, that's too bad, your problem.
Yeah.
She knows I'm not going to do that. I'm going to work to fix it. And same, if I come to her and say, you know, you keep saying this thing and it kind of pisses me off.
Yeah.
You know, I don't usually say it quite like that, but you know, we know how to talk to each other and she knows how to listen and she will respond and we want to make it better. Yeah. So we make it better.
Yeah. And like you said, like the word perfect's a hard word to use, right? Because like it's to what degree are we defining you know, perfect? And like when you said like you've had 3 fights in the 16 years you guys have been together.
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty good track record.
That's a pretty good track record because y'all have a biblical marriage, right? And communication's important to y'all. So like we've talked about, we're working towards one goal as one flesh. So even when you guys fight or we, you know, have fights or arguments or discussions or whatever hard communication, we know that person's committed to making the marriage better. We're having a communication, not from a standpoint of I'm right, you're wrong, but we're looking towards building our marriage better. Yeah. And this communication is going to do that. Right. And I think there's one thing there that is important is as the husband and as the wife, we should be looking towards Scripture for our answers and our communication, right? If we have an issue, we should try to, whatever our position is, we should be trying to validate it with Scripture. And if we can't, okay, maybe I'm wrong. If we can, okay, let's present this and let's show, okay, here's an issue we've had. And I was saying every single argument is going to be like, you know, like this long theological discussion. But we should be seeking those answers in Scripture so that we can come to terms together because we want a Christian marriage. So maybe that's something that I hadn't thought about. And that's something that has been like my Christian walk, or however you want to put it, has developed so much from our marriage because of that, right? Because when you're alone, it's easy to misstep, right? Because you don't have anybody holding you accountable.
Right.
You know, Deanna can look and be like, you said that you're doing this because, you know, you think that that's right and it seems biblical, but I don't know. Here's, you know, I don't know. Here's the position from my perspective. And I'm like, oh, I was wrong. Yeah. You know, and that's what you gain from a marriage that's motivated towards one goal.
So because we can hold each other accountable, you know, her critiques, when she critiques me, it's the hardest to take. Yeah. Because I know that it's genuine.
Yeah.
But her critique is the most important to me. And okay, I've got a couple things in my brain, so I'm going to try and lay them all out. Hopefully, they all jive together in some way. But back to the fighting and the arguing thing. I mean, I have rough days. This week has been rough. I was just in a bad mood most of this week. Things not going fantastic at the shop this week, whatever. So I had some grumpy days, and I've gotten to the point now where, you know, I can tell I'm being a jerk.
Yes.
And she knows when to give me a little bit of space, when to help encourage the kids, like, hey, you didn't do anything wrong. Dad's had a long day. And she builds me up in that way. She does. She never cuts me down to the kids ever, which is such an important thing. She, again, my wife is amazing. I'm going to brag about her as much as I possibly can. But I've gotten to the point where I can have the arguments in my head before I ever have it with her, because I know I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And she, you know, I'm sure she does the same thing at this point. But I'll do something, or I'll say something almost to get a reaction from her. And then in my head I'm going, why'd you do that?
Tell me, what are you thinking?
And sometimes when I think I'm right, I'm going to go in my head, okay, how does Christ want me to respond to this? Am I behaving in a way that shows that I love my wife and that I want to honor Christ in this moment? And a lot of times the answer is no, and I'll have to correct myself. And that has actually made a pretty big difference in the way I handle, because, you know, on rare occasions she'll do something that frustrates me. And generally it shouldn't frustrate me, but, you know, I'm human, and that's it. That's what I'll do. Okay, I'm human. I'm thinking about this in a human way. I need to look at this from another perspective. And 9 times out of 10, even if I still don't agree with her, I go, okay, I understand where she's coming from, and then we can talk about it. Yeah. Another thing is we never go to bed mad. Yeah, that's 21 important. Years. Yeah. I don't think we've ever gone to bed mad at each other.
I can mirror that, absolutely.
You know, and sometimes that means, you know, we lay down. Yeah. And I posture in such a way where she goes, are you mad at me? And then we talk. Yeah. Or other way around. Yeah. I notice it and I go, hey, babe, what's up? And sometimes the conversation starts kind of coarse like that. What's going on? You're upset with me. What's going on? But you know what? If it takes till 3 a.m, we're not going to bed until things are better. Yeah, and that I can second that. The communicate, like those type of, like, because you could turn over and be like, I'll just go to work, and half the time, like Deanna's like usually still asleep by the time I go to work. So then you're talking 12 hours later, probably by the time those late night communications. You know, there's people that got really important jobs, right? Like, but no, you don't. Yeah, no, you don't. I don't care what your job is. Your job is not as important as your marriage.
Absolutely. And those late night communications are so valuable. You should be staying up till 3 a.m. to have them.
And if you can't stay up to 3 a.m. to have that conversation with your wife, then you need to do some work ahead of time. Yes. To not let it get to that.
And like the importance, like if you were sick, you would call it at work. If you're having a marital struggle that's that important and you need to stay up till 5 a.m. to work it out, then call out sick the next day.
Yeah. You know, the career of being a husband is more important than whatever job you have.
Yes. And we financially support our households from our career, and there's an importance there, right? But if you put the cart before the horse, it doesn't even make sense. We're doing the career or the vocation to support our marriages and our household. So it doesn't make sense to overly prioritize that over our marriages.
Yeah, I'll give a slight pass if you're a surgeon or you're.
That's what I'm saying.
But even then, if you're gonna lay your head on that pillow and those problems haven't been resolved yet, you need to end the night with, honey, I love you. I am committed to you no matter what. I've got to get some sleep because I have no choice but to fulfill my obligations tomorrow. And don't say it just like that, because we're not robots. Yeah. But you need to let her know, I am here no matter what. I love you. We will work through this. We will talk about this. as soon as we can be in the same room together again.
And even what's weird too,
I really don't like that I had to just say that. Like that bothered me.
But like you said with the surgeon example, or like, you know, you have several friends that are like operators. Like we all know that we're affected in our day-to-day lives by things that we go through and struggle with. You know, and if we hold marriage to the proper importance that it is, it's going to be really hard to not be affected. And there is a level of, you know, going out there and just operating, even though you're going to have struggles. But at the same time, if we can't work this out, it's going to affect you doing a surgery or you, I mean, especially if something's super serious, like if it's something that's could breed the types of seed that could lead to a divorce, that is absolutely, if you're, you know, overseas, well, you wouldn't be overseas if you were the night before, but if you're a police officer and you're getting ready to clear a house and all you can think is like, my wife's super mad at me and we've been having these fights and I might get a divorce, that could affect your life, your partner's life, the person that you're coming there to help, or a surgeon, and it could affect your surgery.
Problems grow overnight. Problems grow in silence. When you don't just deal with it, they grow. Now, let's go to the other side because we've harped on fighting and arguing, but because we can do that, because my wife has the power to speak into my heart the way she does, she has the ability to build me up like nobody else can.
Yes.
I can have a friend who can say, oh man, what you're doing at the shop is so cool, or you started a podcast, or whatever the accolade is. If my wife tells me, I'm really proud of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or in a less corny way, before we started this podcast, just, I don't know, a week or two before we really got going, I was having some second thoughts thinking, who the heck am I to put anything out there to the world? You know, I don't have a bunch of money. I'm not, there's nothing special about me in any way other than, you know, I've got a little bit of experience in some of the areas that I want to talk about. And that woman looked at me and said, you are the one that needs to do this. So you have a heart for the men in this country. You want to do your part in leading them to Christ. There's not another voice quite like yours saying what you want to say. You can do it. You need to do it. And I swear to you, there is nothing that can stop me in that.
Yeah. And that is the wife you should be looking for. Someone that's going to be able to say that to you. You know, if you're the 15-year-old and you're looking for someone, because if you're dating, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a wife.
And most people are not, you're not just that. You know, if you're a husband or you're a wife, you're not instantly that.
No.
You know, there's not somebody out there that just knows the right thing to say at the right time. And if they do, it's probably not genuine.
Yeah.
She can do that for me because we have learned and we have grown and we have changed together. Yeah. She knows everything about me. That woman has been with me through every stupid mistake that I've ever made. She's seen me fail. She's seen me succeed. So when she says, I know you can do something, then now I know I can do something.
Yeah.
You know, she's got the ability to speak into my heart like literally nobody else does.
Absolutely. I think we've beat it up pretty good.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Let's wrap it up and just give some simple advice to the young men in the dating pool of, you know, where to go from here.
So if you're 22 to 25 years old and you're in a relationship and you can look at that woman and say, I want to build you up. I want to see the woman that you can become. Then you should make a commitment to her.
Yeah.
And that commitment should look like, I am willing to lay down my life for you. And we all hope somewhere in there, we all hope that we get to go down in a gunfight
Yeah.
protecting our bride or our kids. That's not what I mean, because that's easy.
Yeah.
That superhero stuff is so cool. It's easy. What that means is I'm willing to lay down the option of finding somebody who might be, air quotes, better or different or closer to perfect. I'm willing to lay down the worldly opportunity to become more stable, to build this life of mine first in order to build a life with you. Make that commitment. And I've got plenty of opinions on how we do marriage in this country.
Yeah.
I don't care. That that commitment, whether that's 100% biblical in the way you're supposed to do it or not, doesn't matter. Make that commitment. Get the piece of paper that says there will be genuine consequences if I decide to end this.
Yeah.
Show that young woman that you are committed to her. Put in the effort and reap the benefits because they are there.
Absolutely. I think for me, it's okay to be a Christian young man and be sexually pure and go after a wife and get married and have a bunch of children, adopt a bunch of children, whatever that world looks like for y'all, and go out there, build a strong Christian household and go out there and conquer for Christ, right? That's what we're called to do. And that's okay. And that is an amazing thing of valor, right? To go do that. It's not lame. It's not cool. That is the cool thing to do. Because if you're looking to be cool with the culture or the people you're around, that is not where you should be looking. Christ should be looking down on you. And I don't know if Christ would ever use the term cool. Probably would. And if he's using our modern vernacular, but we want Christ to look down on us and look down and say that stuff that young man's doing in preparation for marriage and honoring that commitment like you talked about is cool. That's what I want him to do as a warrior, to pick up his sword like we talk about and go out there and do battle for him and for what is truth, right? And that's how we do it. And another thing, maybe once you do get married, this is something that's been helpful. My brother's getting ready to get married, and like it's something that I shared with them that because it's such a joyful thing, and you should be joyful for people when they're getting married. But if you have a spouse or even just a girlfriend at the time, and like really look at them, like look at them as the person, not on just like a beauty type thing, but that's important too. And we should always seek beauty in all things, right? Like you would look at you could walk, for an example, you could walk down the sidewalk, right? And there could be the most beautiful flower just right there, and you don't even notice it, right? But really looking at that flower intently, you start to find beauty in the small things. And I think we need to look at our spouse because it's so easy to go through life and just you come home, you're busy, you're got all this going on, but really look at your spouse on a deeper level. And I feel like you will find so much more love for them and more commitment to them and view them as a human, an image of God, right? And look at them that way on a deep, emotional, spiritual, even just a surface beauty level and treat them that way because that's the way they should be treated, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to leave you with the words from Proverbs 31:10. An excellent wife who can find? She is more precious than jewels. My friends, if you have a jewel, don't let her get away. Make the commitment. My young friend, who you know I'm speaking directly to you, make the commitment. It's the best thing you'll ever do. I say that from experience. I've got one that's more precious than jewels. And I hope you guys can all find the same thing.
And us are standing with you, even if the world's not, when you're making these commitments and these decisions to live for Christ and honor that in a marriage. You know, we're here and we're standing with you, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
So
and if you have been in broken marriages, if you've been through divorce, you're divorced currently, you're going through a divorce now, there is grace available to you. You can still get into a good marriage that you can be built up by and you can build them up by. Again, I just said my dad's been in his third marriage for 25 years now, and he has an amazing relationship with a wonderful woman. There's still hope for you too. Do not give up on the institution of marriage. It is worth fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, till next time.
This has been Iron and Grace.